to me. And the first question that I always start with is outside of writing, songwriting, how much writing are you doing? Do you write in journals? Do you do other types of writing, stuff like that?
I do. I read The Artist's Way like 8 years ago, where she talks a lot about it's Julia Cameron, talks about kind of clearing the channel first thing in the morning with morning pages. And morning pages are just 3 pages of kind of stream of consciousness, get whatever you want down on paper, just bleh. And I don't do them religiously, but I do like to write in my journal just kind of first thing in the morning and get out how I'm feeling, so it's not taking up a bunch of brain space. um, and yeah, so I journal quite a bit. Yeah.
What made you start that to begin with?
um, I I've always been a journaler, and I think I was I started it because other writers talked about how good it was for them, and how healthy it felt, and how it kind of cleared the way for actual creative work. And I stuck with it more or less as a practice because I'd seen that it had really worked for me. I just have so much narrative going on in my head every day about a bunch of things that don't need to have that much real estate in my brain. And so if I can get them down on paper, just, like preoccupations or some interaction that happened, or something I'm excited about, just the kind of free matter that floats around, just nice to get it down on paper and kind of get it out. And then that just really helps me to feel less distracted if I'm sitting down to actually write.
So do these things, how often do you go back? Because if I hear you correctly, this is a way to kind of clear your head for the
Yeah.
other stuff. But how often does that journal writing ever give you song ideas?
It actually generates song ideas pretty often. And I don't usually go back through the morning pages, because then what I take from that day is I'll be writing and I'll get this kind of song idea, and then I'll take that song idea to my songwriting journal and start fleshing it out there, rather than like fleshing it out in my morning pages. And but it's definitely happened before, where I'll where something from maybe a dream or some idea that I just woke up with rolling around in my head will come out. And that's another purpose of the morning pages, is to I've loved the way. Have you read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert?
No, I have not.
It's a book on creativity and writing, and it's really easy to read. It's really pretty delightful, but she talks about the idea of ideas, whether that's stories or novels or characters or songs, kind of just floating out in the air in our world creatively. And sometimes they land next to you, or you can kind of grab them out of the ether. And I sometimes feel like I'm walking through a like a like if you guys have cottonwood trees back on the East Coast, um, we have these cottonwood trees in Colorado, and every June, all their sport, like their little floaty white, it looks like cotton floating through the air, and it's terrible for allergies, but but it's a good
Yeah, sure.
metaphor. It's a good metaphor because there's just like little floaty white things floating through the air, and sometimes I just sort of feel like I'm walking through that creatively, and I just go like, oh, here's one and here's one. And the morning pages is a way of pulling it out of the air and just getting it down, like pulling it to earth, and grabbing onto an idea. And then so if I get an idea, I'll take it to my other journal, like
Okay.
I'll drink my coffee and eat my food, and then go, okay, I need to spend a few hours, like an hour or two, working on this. And if I get that idea, I'll take it to my songwriting journal or my notebook and just start to flesh it out, and see what's actually there. And sometimes there's not a whole lot there. There's not much body behind the idea. And then sometimes I'm kind of surprised by how much I can flesh out an idea.
So how do you know when there's not much there? Is there a time, at what point do you go, it's not happening or it's just not working? How do you know when it's not there?
You know, it's usually when I really run out of things to put in the song. And it would probably help to say that most of the time when I'm writing a song, I write from either an idea for a title that I've gotten, or an idea for a chorus, or an idea for a story. Like
Yeah.
it's usually one of the three. Um, and uh, and so I usually do a couple pages of free writing, of sensory kind of free writing, um, taste, smell, sights, describe the scene, all of those pretty basic writing practices, but tapping into all the senses. Um, and if it's a story, I'll start to like flesh out characters. If it's a title idea, I'll start to flesh out like what could work for this title. For example, on my new record, I have this song, Things You Learn the Hard Way.
Yeah.
And this is a good example actually of this idea. I had written the chorus, and the chorus is things you learn the hard way, some lessons you can't teach until you're living through them, the wisdom's out of reach, things you learn the hard way. And I loved the chorus. I was so excited about it because this is great. I love this chorus. It's so good.
And that came first. The chorus came
and
first.
That came first.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was so excited about it. And then I started writing and I started writing from my own experiences. And I'm 34. So I had definitely had some things I've learned the hard way, but I could just immediately tell then that I did not have the depth of personal experience to give that song the gravitas that I wanted it to have. I wanted it to feel like I don't know, like somebody, I wanted it to span many years and have some lightness and have a lot of depth. And so I got to this point where I was like, okay, well, if I'm just drawing from my own life, I don't have enough to make this song what I want it to be. And so I actually got on Facebook and Facebook is kind of a dumpster fire for a lot of things, but in this specific moment, it was really beautiful. I just typed into my personal Facebook page, what are some things you learned the hard way? ? I'm working on a song, ... And I got over 200 comments.
Can imagine. Yeah.
It was like, I could have written an entire album worth of songs from the comments I got. It was amazing. And some of them were very funny and some were totally heartbreaking. And then I got a little overwhelmed because I was like, oh my God, I want to use all these, but I obviously cannot. Right. I have to pick and choose and kind of treat it lightly in a way so that I'm not hitting people too hard with this song. And so every line in that song is taken either from one of those comments or from something I learned the hard way personally. And so that was it. That was an example where I like, how do I know when I've like hit a wall with a song? I just sit there, and usually I've written 1 or 2 pages of stuff and I just sit there and it kind of just runs dry. Like my ideas run dry and I go, okay, well, I'll keep this. Maybe one day I'll finish this. And then I just kind of move on.
How often do those ideas come to you where you wake up and you go, it's a line or a chorus or a melody or something like that?
I feel very consistently like my most creative time is first thing in the morning, as I'm kind of coming out of that dream space. And I think it's because once my brain has a chance to launch into the like necessities of the day and whatever the hell I have on my calendar that I need to do, it just sort of edges out that mysterious, like weird kind of juicy creative space. And so I do really like to just kind of slide out of bed in the morning, make a cup of coffee, sit down with my journal, and just before doing really anything, just kind of explore what's there. I would say that generally speaking, I find that most of my song ideas come to me when I'm in this flow state where I'm doing something that doesn't require much brain power, like vacuuming, washing my dishes on a drive, walking or hiking. When I'm kind of when I've got something pretty an easy task and my mind can just wander, that's when I get my song ideas for the most part. That, and sometimes people will say something and they'll just say a sentence and I'll go, oh, that's a song. That's amazing.
Right.
I love that.
The thing you mentioned about, and I love to talk about this because the role of movement to the songwriting process. And I think I can categorize this as two types of movement. There's the movement where something else is doing the moving for you, whether it's the car or the plane or the train. And then there's the repetitive movements. Now, I've heard running, walking, hiking, cooking, gardening. I've never heard vacuuming before. So thank you for vacuuming, because that's the first time I've ever heard vacuuming.
But I think there's something about the white noise with vacuuming. I don't know.
I don't know what it is, but I've never heard vacuuming. And that's why I was like, there's another one to add to the list of things that people are doing. And whether it's the repetitive element where your mind can focus just on, you know, the ideas, and you're doing something that requires no energy whatsoever, you know, like the cooking and the gardening or the vacuuming, where it's so rote, you don't have to think about it. But then there's the times when songwriters have whole theories about the rhythm of the swinging of the limbs, and the cadence gives them beat ideas. And I interviewed Stone Gossard from Pearl Jam about 6 months ago, and he told me that he has this whole theory about the swinging of the limbs and the cadence, how that introduces song ideas. So I'd love to explore that with you, because I think it's so fascinating, you know, why we think those ideas, those activities give us song ideas.
Oh, that's amazing about the cadence. And because as a songwriter, I never originally worked from a place of starting with rhythm. Although I think, to me, honestly, like, rhythm is the special sauce of all of it. Yeah. it's the root of everything of what we do. And rhythm and groove. But gosh, I think what it does, I've read about this a little bit, and on a scientific level, it occupies, like, it gives our sort of sheepdog brain or monkey brain, the thing that, like, is kind of swinging back and forth. It gives it something really simple to do so that you're able to distract it. And then your subconscious can just work, just can kind of like move. I'm describing it in a very non-scientific way, but I've read a couple different articles about this over the years. And I think there's even a book, something about flow or flow state, that talks a lot about this and about creativity in this way, and sort of when those aha moments come.
Yeah. But why is that better than what I'm interested in? Why is that better than doing nothing? Like, why is vacuuming better than sitting and doing nothing? Like, wouldn't it make sense that anything that you're doing, now I've heard songwriters tell me they've gotten ideas from going over covered bridges in upstate New York, and going over the bumps gives them a beat. I've heard turn signals give song ideas from turn signals. I've heard hiking, the cadence of the walk, you know, gives people, but it would still, but all of those things, you would think your mind is still occupied doing something. So I'm actually, and we clearly don't know the answer, but why is that better than doing nothing, where you're only focused on the writing? I'm not asking you to answer that. If you have a theory, I'm all for it. But
this is such an amazing conversation. And I think for me, I have like a couple of ideas about this. I think on a kind of a theoretical level, music, well, I will say that on a functional level, when I just sit down and I'm just quiet and I'm writing, it becomes very mental. It's all about my brain and kind of my intelligence, and the ideas that I have. So it becomes a really heady process. And that's important to carve out some time. But music itself is so experiential and physical and tactile that I think that the movement gives us this more natural thing to work from when we're creating melody or when we're feeling out the rhythm of words. And it's maybe a more sort of a more integrated and whole way to receive song ideas and to start to work them. I find that when I write songs from this kind of head-on perspective, as like a mental game, I can sometimes fall into the trap of worrying too much about the prettiness of the words, or the prettiness or the wittiness of all of it. And that music is a whole body experience for all of us. And so that I think that the movement gives us something to work from. And I also think that um, I have I have always felt like songs and creative ideas like this, songs and writing, exist in sort of only exist in relationship uh, to other things. They don't exist in a vacuum. I realize now I'm getting really esoteric, but my songs have a certain life that I give to them, and then they take on all this extra energetic meaning and just energy when I perform them and when people hear them. And it creates more, it gives the song more gravity. And so I sometimes think that when we just sit down and we're like, okay, I just need stillness and quiet, and I'm going to write, then we're taking away all of the sensory experiences that the song will be in relationship to. And so I actually think it makes it a little bit harder. Sometimes it's always part of the writing process. Sitting down for me to write, always part of the writing process. It has never not been. And ultimately you do have to sit down and figure out. I spend a lot of time with the rhyming dictionary and like editing and changing things around. But I think that because music is such a whole body experience and something that draws on so many different things, melody, rhythm, ideas, energy, that I believe those practices, or those, walking, hiking, whatever, can actually just help make it flow more easily, especially when it comes to rhythm and melody.
Yeah. Is there an ideal place where you tend to get your best writing done, time of day? And I mean down to like the chair, because I know there's certain places in the house where certain places I write, certain places I revise. Mm-hmm. And I'm very careful about, for whatever reason, it's happened well. It happened, it worked there once. It might as well try it again. So do you have, what is there a ritual to that process, or an ideal environment where you tend to get your best writing done? I mean, like down to the maybe things you have to have with you, whether it's I don't know, a candle or a cup of coffee or time of day, all that stuff. So have at it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I love having, I usually write at home. And usually in the morning or midday.
Yeah.
Sometimes in the afternoon. I never write at night. I never get anything good done at night, songwriting wise. I'm just too tired.
I hear you.
I love to have a candle lit. That just feels good to me. And I love to have a cup of coffee. I love to write in notebooks that don't feel precious to me. I like college ruled notebooks. Like
this is the stuff I love. So
yes!
Another question I was going to ask you, because I could do a whole website dedicated to how particular songwriters are to the types of pens, the color of ink, the brand of pen, down to the color of the notebook, all that stuff. So, because again, it's people feel like it's confidence. So yeah. So do you have so let's talk about those down to the writing utensils and the paper. You go ahead. College line you were saying, but yeah. Okay.
I have to have a pen. I hate writing with pencils. I hate it. And I have to have paper that I feel, people are always buying like moleskin notebooks and stuff. And I just need paper that I feel like is cheap, that I can really work things out on and tear things out and scratch shit out, and paper that I feel like I can waste.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's I actually don't feel comfortable wasting or spending a lot of, because I write a lot of stuff, and it usually takes me, I don't know, probably 10 to 15 pages of writing, sometimes 20, to work out a song and to edit things and rewrite them. And I'm just most comfortable with I like college ruled because I like the thin lines. any like black or blue pen. I just need it to be able to write well, and it's got to be ballpoint because I just write so quickly that if it's an ink uh like a fountain pen,
Yeah.
it smears.
Right.
and and so it's so funny. There's a bank in our town called Alpine Bank, and they have the best pens, and they're free, so you can just get as many as you want whenever you walk in there. And I swear that like I just have so many of these, and they just write really perfectly. They're just like a Bic like pen, like a clicky pen.
Yeah. Look at the way you're talking. It's like this. You
Yeah.
talk about these pens with such affinity, but right? I mean, that's the stuff that makes a difference to people. I
Yeah.
mean, it for whatever reason, whether it's superstition or confidence or just because it's easy to write with. Um,
And I
you
think
know,
we create these neural pathways when we have positive experiences, and we create these little rituals around writing, and therefore every time we return to them, that ritual helps us connect in to that
absolutely.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why when people say, oh, it doesn't matter, I can write anywhere. I'm like, I'm sure you can, but
Yeah.
what's the disadvantage of knowing where you do it the best? So do song ideas come to you then? Because I think you mentioned walking. Um, do you ever notice, and you may not know the answer to this, but do you notice that those songs that have come to you when you are, locomoting, shall we say, are different from the ones when you're at home in the chair?
Yeah, I would say that oftentimes the song ideas that come to me when I'm moving have better better melody and better rhythm.
Yeah.
Um, I I remember when I first started writing, I really went at it from this kind of, again, this like head-on perspective where I just sit down and make myself sit and write. And on my first album, Magnolia Queen, one of the things that I noticed about those songs is that they're all really tight and locked in rhythm wise, and there's not much groove or flow to the songs rhythmically. And that was just something that I just had to get a little bit more comfortable with uh, in songwriting myself. And once I became more comfortable and I had kind of just like a lot more ease around it, and I didn't feel so. I think when you first start writing, and you probably can relate to this, Ben, you're so just you have so much to say and you're so hungry to get it out and you want it to be so good and you attach a lot of weight to it, and then the more you do it, the freer you begin to feel with it. And that's how I've noticed myself freeing up my rhythm and my melodies, and being more exploratory and creative the further I go in my career. And some of my songs still have pretty traditional, they have like traditional time signatures and pretty traditional beats. But yeah, I think that the songs that I've written when I was hiking or walking felt just like they had more kind of organic movement to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that. I think that would make sense.
Yeah.
When you are, I love the storytelling in your songs. And when you're when you're singing about something that happened to you,
Yeah.
do you need distance to be able to write about those events? Can you write about them right afterwards? I mean, I always tell the story, but Hemingway famously said he could never write about Paris when he was in Paris. He needed distance. So when you're writing about those events or an emotion,
Yeah.
do you need distance from it? Whether it's emotional distance or, actual time, or is it better to write about it in the immediacy of it?
I have found that I need less distance from an experience now to write about it. I guess it depends on the experience. And that I often will just write down some pretty salient things in my writing journal about the physical experience of what I'm going through in that moment. For example, on the new record, I have a song called Hometown Hero, which is about my cousin who died by suicide. He was
Yeah.
a veteran, and that weekend, everything in that song all the images in that song came from the weekend that I flew to Michigan to be with our family for his service after he died. And I remember that weekend feeling so present and so tapped in, because that's what grief in that moment does to everybody,
Yeah.
or at least did to me. And that I wrote, I just was like, I'm not ready to write a song about this. But I felt this urgency that I needed to get down the images that I was seeing, and the experience of it, the physical experience, the memories. I wanted to get it down because I knew I would write about it at some point. And the chorus of the song talks about his service, and his service was on All Saints Day, and that's when we buried him. And I flew in on Halloween, and it was really rainy and really dark and really moody, which felt appropriate. And then we woke up the day of his funeral, and it was like the most beautiful fall day, and it was like the saddest day I'd ever experienced. And the sharpness of that juxtaposition of this perfect blue-skied Michigan fall day with all these gorgeous leaves, and all of us just dressed in black, and like the trumpet playing taps over like his casket with the flag draped over his casket. It just was seared into my memory, and I was like, Emily, write this down. And I came back to that once I was ready to write about it. He passed away in October 2019. I wrote the song in April of 2020. So
wow.
Actually, okay. That was pretty soon, now that I think about it. And it felt like it was right on the cusp of being too soon for me, but I also felt it coming, and I felt like I'm ready to write this. When it came to, like, on my last album, I have a song called The Dress that is about my experience as a sexual assault survivor.
Yeah.
That took me years to write.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It took me years to even feel comfortable writing about it and exploring my own memories of it. And then another like 3 or 4 years to just like finish it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think that I need less time now. I think I'm able to explore things in a safer way, and kind of write about them. But yeah, I usually can't write about something right as it's happening to me. It's usually at least a couple months of processing time.
Yeah. All right. Last question.
Yeah.
I find that songwriters are voracious readers.
Yes.
I fully expect this to be a great answer given our conversation. How much reading do you get to do? Who do you like to read? Who are your favorite authors, favorite genres, stuff like that?
I literally have a stack of like 6 library books right now.
I knew you would. I had this feeling. I knew I was not expecting to hear you. I don't read. I knew that was not coming. So yeah.
Okay. I love fiction. I love storytelling. It has to be well-written fiction, of which there's no lack of great fiction. I joined a book club that sends me a book a month too, and I have the local library. The book club is actually run by Cheryl Strayed.
Wow.
Yes. It's through this app called, I promise this is not sponsored. It was advertised to me in my Instagram feed, and I signed up. It's called Literati.
I've heard of it, but I got to check that out because I love her. She's great.
She's amazing. Yeah. And they send you a book a month, and she picks it, and then she manages the discussion about it on the app. And I mainly just like to have somebody tell me what to read, what's good. Yeah. And so I just got a book. Last month's book was a book called The Salt Path, which was actually not fiction. Have you heard of this?
No.
It's by a Welsh author named Rainer Wynn. And she and her husband, when I read the back of it, I was like, oh God, this is too sad. I'm not going to be able to read this. I just need an escape. But I read it. It was wonderful. She and her husband lose their farm in Wales, and he's diagnosed with a terminal neurological disease.
Oh, jeez.
And they like lose everything and they go hike the coastal path on the southwest coast of England, which is sort of like an Appalachian Trail type of thing. And they just use the last of their money to buy packs and sleeping bags and a tent and like stock up on food, and they go, and it's amazing.
Wow.
It's so good. I will not tell you how it ends,
Yeah.
but it was so good. And then right now, I'm reading a book that Cheryl Strayed picked for our book club called The Final Revival of Opal and Nev. And it's a totally fictional book by a young, very talented writer named Donnie Walton. And it's about these like two fictional characters in the music business and their interactions with like race and music industry. And it's really well written. It's great. But generally speaking, I really love fiction. I love stories that just suck me right in. And I read a lot.
Wait, so when you go to the library, how do you decide what to pick?
I usually just go straight to the new fiction, read section, and I just start opening jackets and reading the descriptions and going like, and then I will always flip to a chapter and start reading a chapter and decide if the writing is good enough. Because like I can, That's know great. What I mean? Like I just have to, it's like I can get a sense for it pretty quickly. You know what I mean? You have a PhD in English, so of course you understand. And so I do like a little sample reading. And, I picked up this book called, God, what am it's called I can't even see it right now. I can't see the jacket cover. But yeah, I just love fiction. I just like it. It's nice to lose myself. I mean, some of the classics that I have read over and over again. I love Isabel Allende.
Yeah.
And I always read anything that Isabel Allende comes out with. And she writes a book a year. She's got this ritual. She's on track. Every year she writes a book or a novel, usually a novel. And her characters are always so wonderful, and her writing is so amazing. I speak Spanish, but I can't really make it through her books in Spanish because it's too it's just too dense for me. I speak conversational Spanish. I have a Spanish lit degree, but it just takes me too much time. So I always read the English translations. But I love Isabel Allende. She's one of my favorite authors. I love Cheryl Strayed. There's so many writers that I love, and I love the Brontes.
Yeah.
Wuthering Heights and some of those classics. I grew up reading a lot. I was a bookworm as a kid. And in fact, actually our local librarian just came across Jeff Tweedy's book about songwriting and sent me a picture and said, "Hey, have you read this book? I think it's called How to Write One Song."
Right.
And she sent me a picture of it, and I said, "No, I haven't." And she said, "I'm going to put it on the shelf for you, so I have to go pick it up today."
That is so nice.